Welcome everybody to the July Business Apps NYC event. Like always, we're joined by members of the NYC Business Apps user group and the Power Platform user group. I would like to thank Reza Dorrani for volunteering to give us a session on Power Platform integration and showcase how Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI can work better together. I also want to thank the event organizing committee, Mihir Shah, Aaron Fishman, Arun Vinod, and myself, Eric Levin. Although we're missing some of them today, but they helped organize this event. So this is our sixth event for the NYC Biz Apps user group. And while we're still waiting, we do have people registered from the tri-state area as well as other locations nationally, maybe internationally, I don't know. During the presentation, if you don't mind, please keep yourself muted. You can ask the questions in the chat window or raising your hand in Teams. We might have like breaks for questions in the middle, or we'll try to address them in the chat window as they come. Before we start, let's give a warm welcome to Reza Dorrani. Reza is a Microsoft Business Applications MVP and a Microsoft certified trainer. He works at Catapult Systems as a Power Platform practice technical lead. He's also an international speaker, a trainer, the Houston Power Platform user group leader, and a Power Apps and Power Automate community dual super user, which I don't know even what that means. His passion is to share his knowledge and learnings around the Power Platform, and his video blogs are on all things Power Platform, are available on his YouTube channel that you can see at the bottom of the screen. So Reza, we're all eager to hear what you have to say. So I'll go ahead and stop the presentation now, and you can take control.
Thank you so much. I'm hoping that my audio is fine. Just to confirm, everybody can hear me?
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear. All right. Thank you. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, and I will pop up the presentation. Switch to presentation mode. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to today's session. The session is on Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI, almost all of the Power Platform together. And we're going to look at a story around how we can leverage all of these three different services together to create a better together story. I was already introduced, but I'll just quickly go through my introduction. I'm a BizApps MVP. I'm based out of Houston, Texas, currently working in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm in a project right here. So my time zone, I believe, is the same as New York. Community super user. I am someone who's heavily plugged into the community. This is a badge given to individuals who contribute selflessly in the community forums. I was lucky enough to be a part of those forums ever since its inception, and thanks to that, I was awarded as a super user. I lead the Houston Power Platform user group. Our user group runs every third Wednesday of the month. So next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central will be the Houston user group session, which will also be online. So if you get a chance, then do join us. I have a YouTube channel wherein I video blog about all things Power Platform and M365. So if you've never checked it out, I'll recommend you to give it a try. And if you would like to connect with me, that's my Twitter handle. I might not respond on my email, but I'll give you a quick response on Twitter. Okay, so the session today is all about integration. And this slide, I am assuming everybody has seen this before. Anyone who has worked or looked at any presentations around the Power Platform, this is the #1 slide that always pops up. And the key thing here that I want to touch base on are three pillars of the Power Platform that we are going to focus on today. Power BI for analyzing our data, Power Apps to act on our data, and Power Automate to perform automations, workflow automations on our data. Everything starts and ends with your data. This data could be living on premises, could be in the cloud. To connect to that data, we need connectors, which is already made available for us in the Power Platform. Plus, if you want to bring your data into a service or a data service that the platform itself exposes, that's called Microsoft Dataverse. So you can leverage that platform as well for storing your data. Now, the session is all about using these services together rather than using them independently. And the total is greater than the sum of its parts. And this is true in case of the Power Platform. With Power Apps, I can drive a business process through an app. I can act on my data. I can create, update, delete, read. I can perform CRUD operations on my data directly in the Power Apps itself, which gives the users an easy to use mobile experience. On the other side, we have Power Automate, which allows me to automate my data. So if I have a Power App where users create information or update information, when that operation is performed, if I have a business process or a workflow process that I want to start, on top of that data set, I can do exactly that by leveraging Power Automate. And then using Power BI, I can drive analytics against my data source. And all of these three things can work together and be contextually aware of each other. And that's where the true power of this platform comes in, is when you start integrating these together. I have been working on the Power Platform for the last 4.5 years now, and I've probably done over 50 projects. I can vouch for this. At least 45 of those involved me using more than one service in my projects. If I ever built an app, I always had a workflow scenario around it, so I leveraged Power Automate. If I needed a dashboard for it, I leveraged Power BI. So more or less, you are going to use one or the other or all of them together. And that's what is going to be the crux of our conversation today. So first, we will look at Power BI and Power Apps and how these two services can integrate with each other. Now, inside Power BI, we have visualizations that we can select, add our fields from our data set that we've connected to our report, and drive visualizations. The thing about these visuals that we add in Power BI, more or less, they are all read-only. You are consuming data and you are visualizing, analyzing your data. However, if you would like to perform CRUD operations on your data, creating, updating, deleting, if you want to take some action on your data, Power BI does not have that feature, but Power Apps allows us to do that. So why not leverage a Power App that lives within the context of a Power BI report, which allows us to do exactly that. So here we have a custom visual in Power BI, which is generally available. It's called the Power Apps custom visual that you can add directly to your Power BI report. When you do so, you can define the fields that you want to pass from the Power BI dataset to Power Apps. And when you do that, because the data set is the same underlying data set that Power BI uses, if you were to filter, slice and dice your data in Power BI, those changes will be automatically reflected in Power Apps as well. So Power Apps and Power BI can share that data set, and at the same time, any refiners that you apply to your Power BI report, those refiners would be pushed over, that filtered data set would be pushed over to the Power App as well. Another key feature that you get with the Power Apps visual is when you add that app inside the context of Power BI, if your data source, the way you've connected your data source, if that is in something known as direct query mode, wherein the Power BI visual performs a query against the data source, it doesn't store the data locally in cache. It's not an import query, it's a direct query. If your data source supports that, when you add that Power Apps visual inside Power BI, you also get the ability to trigger a refresh of the Power BI visuals. And when you do that, if you do that, it is more like a live refresh experience that can take place. And I'm going to show you that live in the form of a demo. So you'll have a Power App wherein users will enter data, they will click submit. The moment they hit submit, Power Apps will initiate a refresh of the Power BI report, and everything would just refresh automatically because it's direct query and show you the latest data live. Unlimited refreshes because basically we are refreshing the visual, which is re-triggering the call to direct query. So let's look at that first in the form of a demo. Then we'll look at Power BI and Power Automate. Okay, so let me first close my camera. So I save some bandwidth. And I'm assuming you guys can see my screen fine. Okay, so let's begin with creating a very simple Power BI report first. And for that, I need data. So I'm leveraging Microsoft Dataverse in this case. I have a table in Microsoft Dataverse called devices. It's a very simple, plain example wherein I'm maintaining information about inventory that's being maintained by my organization. Sorry, someone has an open mic. Sorry. Okay, so I have a table that I have in Microsoft Dataverse that is maintaining certain device information, basically inventory information in my organization. And if I head over to data here and go to custom columns, I have data that I have populated as part of this table wherein I have the name of my device, a status associated with my device, an ID, the type of the device, and other basic pieces of metadata related to my device. Now, bear in mind, we are using Power BI. You can connect to any data source of your choice. In this scenario, I am showcasing it with Microsoft Dataverse, which supports direct query. So to start building the report, I will head over to Power BI desktop. And once Power BI desktop launches, I will first go ahead and connect to Microsoft Dataverse. And right here in the ribbon, we have that option. So I can select Dataverse. And when I do this, I need to enter the environment domain. Now in Power Apps, try to remove this thing. In Power Apps, if I need that information, I can head over to the admin center and head over to my environment in which I have this table created, which is right here. And that URL that it requires is the environment URL that I can just copy from here. Head back to my Power BI desktop, plug in that URL, and this is where I can decide in which mode I would like to connect my data source in. Because Dataverse supports direct query, I get that additional option. I'm going to select that and I will click OK. Now, once I do this, it's going to connect to that specific environment and it's going to showcase all the tables that are available as part of that environment. I have a table called devices. So I'm going to search for devices. I'm going to pick my table. I'm going to click load. And now,
Reza,
yes.
your screen got frozen. Is it for me or for everybody? I don't know. Sorry about that.
Can someone confirm? You can see my screen?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Sorry.
I think, Krishna, if that's you, you may have to just try and rejoin. Okay. So I have my table that I have imported or that I have a direct query connection with. That's my data set right here. And in this, I can select the fields. Now, this is Power BI, so I can add visualizations. I'm going to add a very simple case here. I'm going to showcase my device name. I'll show my device ID, and maybe I'll show the status of my device. And once I do this, it's going to connect to my table, and it's going to put that information right here. Now, my device ID is not pretty, so I'm going to remove that and use this device ID, which is a number field. And I won't summarize this. Okay. So I have my device names, I have the status of my device and the ID, and this is basic information that's coming over from that data set. And let's say I just add a visualization as well. So I add this chart visual right here. I'm going to position this on the right hand side. And maybe I want to show the device type. So I'll add it right here, add it in the legend. So this will showcase all the device types and the number of devices that belong to that type in my data set. So this is basic visualizations around Power BI. You can add the visual, connect it to your fields, and start building your dashboards and visuals. The key here is now, this is great for visualizing data, viewing data. But I want to go ahead and add a Power App right here inside this Power BI report itself. Now, I tried this before. I was having some issues with Power BI desktop, so I'm just going to go ahead and publish this. And when I publish this, it's going to put it on the service. So I'm just going to call this test New York City, save, and this should go ahead and publish this to my workspace. And this should now be available directly in Power BI. So I'm going to head over to powerbi.com, head over to my workspace, and right here I have my test NYC report. If I open this, I'm going to get that same two visuals right here, and I have my data set, which is my Dataverse table that I connected inside this Power BI report in direct query mode. Now, once I have this here, I'm going to edit this. And this now allows me, of course, to add visualizations here as well. So the visual that I would like to add here is Power Apps. And on the right-hand side here, I can see that I have the Power Apps visual. If you don't see it for some reason, you can go to 3 ellipses. You can click on Get More Visuals and search for Power Apps and add it. In my case, I already have it here. So I'm just going to click on this. The moment I do that, it adds the visual on the screen. So I'm just going to increase the height and I am going to position this right here in between. I'm going to kind of try and squeeze this in, maybe try and move this more to the right. Okay, so I have my Power Apps visual that I added inside my Power BI report. Now comes the key step. When I want to create this Power App, the first step for me is to pass the fields from the Power BI data set to the Power App, because this app is living within the Power BI report. So for that, I will select my Power Apps visual, and from the right hand side under that same data set, I can now decide which fields I would like to pass from Power BI dataset to my Power App. And here I'm going to pick my device ID, device name, device ID again, device status, maybe the device type, and maybe the photo. Right? I'm just going to pass these fields. And some of them are summations. I'm going to say don't summarize them. So I just passed these 5 fields. And you can decide which fields from your data sets you would like to pass to the Power App. And the moment you do that, if you notice, the visual now changes to the next section, which is asking me to either create an app or connect this to an existing app. In this case, I'm going to try and build a brand new app, and I'm going to click create. And the moment I click create, this will now open up the Power Apps maker experience for us right here in my tab. And not just that, when this maker experience loads up, it will load up with a special object. On the left hand side, you can see that it's called Power BI integration. You will get this object only when you create your app or you connect your app from that visual. And this Power BI data or this Power BI integration object has the data and the fields basically that we selected to pass to this visual. Now, when this app got created, it got created with a gallery. And if you look at the data source here, it's Power BI integration. That's this object .data. And that's why it's showcasing all the data that's coming in from my Power BI data set. And this is Power Apps. So we are free to customize. We are free to make changes here. So I'm going to make a few quick changes. I'm going to change the theme of my app. It's number 1. I'm going to change the gallery to have a picture control. Okay, I just changed the style of my gallery. For the picture control, I will leverage the property that I passed from my Power BI report to Power Apps. That was the photo property. So you see those fields that I selected, they are all listed right here. So I'll pick photo. It will paste the photo of my device right here if it's existing. I have my device name. Maybe I would like to show the status of my device. So I can change this to device status. So it shows me the status of my device right here. And this is an app about devices. So I'm just going to quickly add a header. I'm going to call this devices, center align this, just trying to make this look good aesthetically, nothing much. And that's it. So I have devices and I have data that's coming in from Power BI. Now, once I'm done with my app, I'm going to give this app a name. So I'm going to call this my NYC app. Sorry for the wrong spelling. Let's correct that. I'll click save. And what's going to happen now is that this Power App will be saved and published in my specific environment that I selected to create this app in. Now, once I'm done with this, if I head back, I can actually close this tab. So I'm gonna leave this tab. I'll go back to my Power BI report and I can see my Power App right here. I can adjust the width to ensure that it's sitting in neatly right here. I can move the visual around, of course. I'm just going to place it here and I'm going to click save. So my report is saved. If I refresh my screen, this now will load my Power BI report, which has my connected data set in direct query mode. I have my visuals, and right in the middle, I have a Power App. And this Power App is getting data from the Power BI data set. Reza proved that. Well, let's try filtering our data in Power BI. So let's say I select this particular device, which is Acer Spire S5. If I select this in Power BI, I've basically filtered to that specific record. If you observe the Power App right now, the Power App has also gone ahead and just filtered that result and directly showcased just that specific item that I select. If I was to multi-select in Power BI, that same changes will be applied right here in my Power App as well. So basically, as I slice and dice my data using the filters or by just directly clicking on the visuals right here, those changes would be reflected in my Power App. So that proves that the data in the Power App is coming from the Power BI report and it is contextually aware of the data. Now, this is a Power App. So what can we do with the Power App? We can read data, which I am showcasing right here, which Power BI can also do. But the key thing here is for me to perform CRUD operations on my data. I want to provide the users with an option to maybe update the status or maybe create a new device, add a new device into my inventory. I want to give my users that access directly right here inside this Power BI report through that Power App. So in order for me to do that, I will once again edit the Power BI report, and this is important that we follow the exact same steps. And here, I will go ahead and edit this visual. The moment I click edit, once again, it launches Power Apps directly from Power BI inside a new tab. And once it does this, it's going to take me back to that exact same experience as before. Okay, so I'm back to my Power BI report. Now, this integration object is a read-only object. That's purely because the Power BI data set is read-only, right? I just get that data. And that's exactly what I'm getting here, and I'm showcasing it in my Power App. However, in Power Apps, I can connect to any data source of my choice. I can go to data sources here, go to add data, and connect to any connector. I can connect to SharePoint, OneDrive, SQL, you name it. In my case, my database is Microsoft Dataverse, which is already connected right here. And my table is called devices. So why not just connect to that same table? So I'm connecting directly now to my database table called devices. So if I look at the connections, I have this, plus I have Power BI integration, which is driving the data in this gallery. Now, when the user makes or clicks on this little icon here, let's say when the user selects this, I want to take them to a form where they can edit this data directly in my data source. So to do that, when the user selects this, I'm going to just add a few steps. I'm going to set a variable in Power Apps. I'm going to call it var item, okay, creating a variable. And when the user clicks this, I want to go and look up the data source. So look up my data source, which is my devices table. And how am I getting this? I already have it connected in my app. So look up my devices table where the device ID is equal to this item dot the fields that I'm passing from Power BI. I have them in this gallery so I can use it. I'm passing device ID. So I'll look up, basically query my table and figure and get that record which has the matching device ID and store that record in this variable. So the moment I click this, it will perform a query and store that data in that specific variable. So I have the context of the item now, the true context of the item from my data source. Now I need a screen wherein the user can update the data. And in Power Apps, we have a nice template of a form screen. So I'll just leverage this. So this creates the form screen template. Now for the form control, I need to give it a data source, which will be nothing but my devices table. And once I do this, I can define the fields that I would like to provide to the user so they can make modifications on. So let's say I want to give the option of device name, device status, device type, maybe manufacturer name, memory. I can decide which fields I want, right? Price, processor, my choice. I'll just add a few fields for now, and I clicked on add. So it added those forms. This page, we need a nice title. I'm going to call this my device info screen. Now for this form control, it's connected to my data source, but which item should I be showcasing? So if I head over to the item property, this is where I'll use that variable, var item. Okay. And this variable gets loaded when the user clicks on this icon in any item in this gallery. Now, once that variable is loaded, I want to redirect the user or navigate the user to my form screen. So here, I'm going to just take a few steps before that. I'm going to reset my form in case my form has previous data that it's holding, just reset it. I want to create an editable experience for the form. So I'll set the form in edit mode. These are basic formulas that we can leverage in Power Apps. And once I'm done with these two steps, I'm going to navigate the user to the form screen. So I'm going to call the navigate function, and I will navigate the user to my second screen. Now, if I play this app right here, let's say I select Acer Aspire U, I click this. Observe how it took me from the first screen to the second screen, and it shows me all the data directly from my table for that specific record. And this is available for me in the form of a form. Now here on the top, we have two icons that the template provided. One is a cancel icon, which the user selects. I would just like to take them back, so no action. If I preview this, click this, it will take me back, right? If I select a different record, it takes me here. Now, when I select this submit button, what it does is it goes ahead and submits the form. Submits the form to my data source, which is my table in Microsoft Dataverse. And the form control has a property called on success. So when it successfully does this, what do you want to do? Well, I want to notify the user. I want to give the user a message. And I'm going to say your device has been updated successfully. And how do I know that it's successfully? Well, I'm calling the success method. This method only gets called when it is successful. There is a failure method as well. And I'm going to show a success message to the user. That's the first thing. Now, whatever update I have made here, this is going in my data source. This app is in Power BI, connected to the data set in direct query mode. I want my Power BI visuals to also refresh because I have made a change. I want that change to show up live in Power BI. To do that, if your data source is in direct query mode, I can directly use a function called Power BI integration.refresh. And this function is a part of this object that you get when you create the app. So if I just select this, what this will do is it will initiate a refresh of the Power BI visuals. So I'm notifying the user, I'm initiating a refresh of the Power BI visual, and then I'm going to navigate the user to the home screen, because what I had to do here is complete. So my home screen is screen number 1. That's it. Now, if I preview this app right here, let's say the device status for this specific device here, Acer Aspire, is empty. Let's say I change this to reserved and I submit this. Notice I get that message, but it did not redirect. Why? Well, because on success of the form, I am first notifying, which it did. It's trying to refresh. Right now, I am not running this Power App in the context of Power BI. Right now, I am editing this app. So this function, if you truly want to test it, you have to test it in Power BI. So once you make your changes is when you have to go back and save and publish your app. Now, there are certain caching challenges. So what I typically do is I just append a number in the title just for testing right now. So I just made this devices 1. I will save this app. I will go ahead and publish this app. I will right click and close the tab. Okay. Back to my Power BI report. I'll click save and I will refresh my Power BI report. Now I just published my app. I may or may not see the latest version. It takes a few seconds before the latest version gets pushed out inside this visual. So you see right now it still says devices. I know that's not the latest version because I changed the label to devices 1. So I'm going to keep refreshing until I get devices 1, probably be a couple of refreshes before we see that information here. One more. Come on, Power Apps. All right, loading up. All right, I see that. Okay, now let's try and see this live in action, okay? So let's say on the left-hand side, let's say I pick Acer Aspire M1. So in Power BI, I'm selecting a specific field. If you notice, the device status is empty, right? So I get that right here. Now, let's pick this one. Let's pick Acer Aspire, what is this? S3, right? So I'm going to select this. And this is the record that's showing up. If I click this, it will take me to the form, right? See, the device status is empty. So let's say this has been reserved in someone's name. Let's say this gets reserved in Krishna's name. So I'm changing the status to reserved, right? Changing, and I can make other changes. Maybe the RAM changed to $630 or the price changed to $630. When I make my changes, if I click submit, now if you notice, something different happens. One, the data is being submitted to my data source, which is Dataverse. At the same time, if you look at that record now, the status here in Power BI changed live, right? It just made the change live inside of Power BI. So basically what happened was, because I called that function Power BI integration.refresh, it went ahead and refreshed my visuals so that it requeries the database and brings the latest data over. Let's check it out in a different way. Let's say I'm only looking out for netbooks. So I select netbook. I only have 4 and I want to pick this one and I want to change the status of this to damaged. Maybe this one got damaged. I change the status. I click submit. Not doing anything. Check this out. This is live. Data is going to my data source, getting updated. The refresh is being called. Check this out. The status here live changed to damaged. So you can transform your data, perform CRUD operations on your data right here. Any questions so far before I go to the next part? I'm trying to see if there's anything in the chat. Anyone would like to go off mute and ask their question? No? All good?
Quick question.
Yes.
You mentioned that that it was you're using the service to edit your form, but why were you not able to do it on the desktop?
Why would I not be able to do it? Because if I do it on the desktop directly, when you say service, you mean you're talking about the Power BI app. You can do it here, but when I tried it, I had some issues. It should work. It should work. There's no reason it shouldn't work. In my case, I was having some caching issues.
So Reza, can I jump in here?
Yes, please.
So Charles Sterling, I used to be on the Power BI team, now on the Power Apps team. Some of the issues that you're going to have is it's going to try and suck you to the web because Power Apps does not have a desktop authoring experience. So you'll never be able to author the applications in Power BI desktop. And it's that transition of identities that's almost certainly causing Reza his problem, because it's going to go out and say, hey, I'm going to take you to a browser, and it's going to take him into a browser with whatever identity that Reza's got lots of identities, if you guys didn't know that. And that's causing the problem because it's actually passing in the app ID, which doesn't exist in the other tenant. So it's common to run into this problem. And the high recommendation is to actually do what he did, which is make sure they're all across the board in the service. The only time you're going to run into problems is if you have to change the model itself, which of course you have to do in Power BI Desktop. Reza, you've been doing an amazing job. Krishna, congratulations on that S3.
Before I accept the new laptop, I totally agree with Chuck's, because I have experienced the same issue. I have spent probably 2-3 hours and reading all the things, looking at every aspect. Then I realized that I'm using on my personal laptop wherein the domain is completely different. It always says that authenticating. It never works. Never ever works. The same exercise I did, it did not work. Then when I opened the web version, it started working.
Okay, so I think everyone got the answer, not to use the web version when you're adding Power Apps, but that was a great question. Okay, so we performed simple operation on our data. Now let's try and do a little bit more. Okay, let's try and add more. And I'm gonna try something. This is actually something that Chuck asked me before. Can we do bulk update? What if I want to update my data in bulk directly from Power Apps? Let's see how we can do that. Okay, so here's my gallery, and in this gallery, I'm going to first do two things. Okay, I'll give a delete operation. So let's say I want to delete the data. I'm going to add an icon right here. It's the trash icon. I'm going to add it right here. When the user selects this, I want to delete the data. So the way I'm going to delete it is very similar to the way I looked up that record. So all I have to do is say that, hey, from my data source, which is devices, I would like you to delete this record. So get the context of this record and delete it. And the moment you delete it, go ahead and initiate the refresh of my Power BI data set, because I am deleting it in my table. So literally one line of code is all what you need. 2 lines is all what you need to delete your data and refresh the Power BI vision. Now let's talk about bulk updation of data. Let's say right here, I wanted to update statuses in bulk. So one thing I need is for the user to make a selection. So inside the gallery, I'm going to add a checkbox control. And I'm trying this on the fly. This is not practiced. So I'm going to add a checkbox right here. And I'm going to try and move the image a little bit here. Okay, and I'm going to give the checkbox so the user can select the items that they would like to bulk update. And I'm going to add a button, not here, outside of the gallery. I'll add a button here. I'm going to call this bulk update. Okay. Now, when the user selects the checkbox that is on check, I'm going to add this item to a collection. A collection is a local data storage that gets created in Power Apps. You can build this on the fly. It's for a specific user session. So I'm going to add this to a collection. I'm going to call collect, call data. Okay, this is the bulk data. Now I'm trying to collect into my collection what? I want to collect the information of the item directly from my data source. So I'll use that same formula, look up my data source and get that item reference. So all I've done right now is when the user checks this checkbox, it's going to collect that item inside that collection. And if the user unchecks the checkbox, I'm going to remove that item from the collection. Okay, so as I click, the collection will get loaded. As I uncheck it, it will start removing that record. Now I need to see all that data. So what I'm going to quickly do is I'm going to create another screen. I'm not going to style the screen. I'll just add a gallery here, and the data for this will come from that collection. Okay. And here I'm going to add a button. I'm going to call this submit, so the user can submit data in bulk. And of course, they are updating the status. So maybe I'll just give a text box for the user to add the status that they want to update for all of those items in one go. Okay. Now, if I go back to my screen one, when the user clicks on this bulk update button, all I will do is take the user to that new screen that I created. So let's check it out in action. I'm going to preview this. I select this, bulk. Now it takes me to this screen, but observe it's contextually aware that I selected these 3 records. Now comes the key part. I want to update my data source in bulk. So when the user hits this button, the submit button, what I would like to do here is I'll use a function called patch. Patch is used to update your data source. So update what? My devices table. Okay. What is the record that you want to update? Now, I want to directly update this entire collection. The entire collection is what I want to patch to my data source. However, in this collection, currently the status of these items are different, right? Damaged, reserved, in repair. I want the status to be the status that the user enters in this text box. So what I can do right here is I can use a simple formula to update the collection right here called update this collection. True, that means update every record in this collection. And go and update the device status. Yeah, device status with the value in this text box. So text box 1 dot text. That's it. I'm going to close this. Going to complete this function. I finished my patch function, so I've submitted this to my data source. Now I will initiate the Power BI refresh so we can see it live. And I will also go and notify the user that bulk is done. How about that? That's my text. And success. And once this is done, well, user, you go back to the home screen. Okay, that's all I'm going to do. Now, once again, if I preview this, let's say all of these, I want to change the status to reserved. If I click submit, okay, now did it do that? Did it not? I don't know, because I have not run this in the context of Power BI. Also, whenever the user comes back to this screen, I don't want the checkboxes checked. I want it to be reloaded. So on visible of the screen, I will clear that collection. So I'm clearing that collection. And the default value of the checkbox will be this item dot device ID. Is it in that collection? If it is in that collection, then show it, otherwise don't. Okay. So if I go to a different screen and come back here, you'll see all the checkboxes are cleared. Now again, I'm hoping that my formula is right. So if it is, we'll come to know. I'm going to change this to devices number 2, devices 2, because I made a change. I'm going to save this. I am going to publish this. So this should now save and publish my app. I'm going to head back to my report. I'm going to save this. And now let's refresh and let's see if this works. Okay. So here we are in Power BI once again. I am waiting for the Power App cache to be refreshed. Probably 2 or 3 refreshes, and we should have the latest version of the app right here. Currently it is loading. Let's see if I get devices number 2. If not, one more refresh. Loading, loading. Come on, Power Apps, speed up. One last try. Okay, still loading. All right, there you go. Wow, still shows devices 1. I think I did publish, I'm pretty sure. Let's give it one more shot. Nah. Okay, if it doesn't do it this time, I'll have to go and edit it once again. And we can open the floor up for a little bit more. Okay, it did it. All right. So here I am in Power BI. Let's say netbook again. I'll take netbook. Okay, so I'm filtering my data in Power BI. Once I do that, everything will be contextually changed, right? Now here I want to bulk update the statuses. If you see the statuses reserved, damaged, reserved, reserved. Let's say I want to update 3 of those. Let's say I want to update all of those. I click bulk update, it takes me to the screen. Now I want to change the status. Let's say all of the status for all of this, I want to say in repair. They're all gone to repair. Okay. So in repair, I'm going to hit submit. If the demo gods are with me, this should go and update the data source. There you go. It's actually updated those 4 records in the data source, which is the table in Dataverse, and it's initiated the refresh in Power BI, and we can see that live in action right here. So you can perform bulk update operations as well using Power Apps directly in the context of Power BI and refresh the data set. And the same thing will work for delete. Of course, when I delete this specific record gets removed, the data set gets refreshed, and we should see this specific record now disappear. You see, it's gone from my data source. That's because I deleted it. It's also gone away from my Power BI report. So that is an example of full CRUD operations, bulk as well, directly in the context of Power BI. Any questions? Questions, comments? Okay, Chuck says woot. All right. Okay, I'll move to the next one. I will. If I see one question came in, I will try and take that at the end. Just to cover the last part. So we've seen Power BI and Power Apps. There's also a feature of having a Power Automate, basically a flow visual inside of Power BI as well. And here what you can do is very similar to Power Apps. You'll add the visual, you'll select the fields you want to pass. The data will be contextually sent over, same concepts, same principles. The only difference is instead of a Power App, it will call the flow and pass the array of data from Power BI, contextual filtered, to Power Automate. It's exactly the same experience. And let me show you one use case with this, a quick use case. I'll actually try and show it to you with the same report. So I'm going to edit this. Let's say I have a requirement wherein I need to send an email out to myself with the filtered data that I'm viewing. I want that in an email, or I want that in Excel, whatever my requirement is. So to get the flow visual, I'll go to get more visuals. And right here, I'll search for Power Automate. I'll click search. Here's the Power Automate visual. It's in preview. This one is in preview. I'll click add. And I can see the visual right here. I'll click on this. So it will add that visual on the screen right here. Okay. Now, once the visual comes in, it's very similar to Power App. You need to send the fields over to this visual. So I'm going to select this specific visual, go to my data set and decide which fields I would like to pass over. So right now it's passing let me just remove both of these and let me decide which fields I would like to pass. In fact, I think something went off. Let me try and re-add this visual. So here's the visual. I'm going to click edit. In fact, let me go back to the report, spotlight this and select the fields that I would like to pass. Same concept. Let's say I want to pass the device ID, the device name, the status, the device type. Let's say I want to pass these 4 pieces of information and the ID, just send it as is. Okay, so I've selected the fields from my Power BI report that I want to pass. Once I'm done with that, I'll click on the 3 ellipses and go to edit. This now will open the Power Automate creation experience directly inside of Power BI, directly. And here I can either select one of the existing templates, and there are some nice ones here. You can update Excel, you can send the data to Teams, you can do a lot of good stuff here. But in my case, I'm going to keep it simple. I'll create a new flow, brand new flow. The trigger for which is Power BI, of course. So the user will click that visual. It's like a button. They click and this flow gets triggered. And here, if I add a compose action, which is like a variable, here under dynamic content, I should be able to see all the data that's getting passed. Now I don't see it right now. That's because when I added the visual, I went back and forth a couple of times. So if you don't do it right, you won't get the data set. So I'm going to try it again. I'm going to add my visual. I am going to add the fields again quickly. Make sure the device ID is not summarized. And now if I go to edit, this will once again take me to Power Automate. I'll create a new flow and I will try and add that same composer action again. Let's try and add that. This time, if you observe here, those fields that I selected, the device name, device status, device type, device ID, they are available right here. And if I pick any of this, it will apply a loop. And the reason why it does that is because the Power BI data set is an array of data. It could be one, it could be multiple. So the way it passes the data over is in the form of an array. Now in my case, I want to keep it simple and just send an email out. So there's a nice action called create an HTML table. And I'm going to create this table from the data that's coming in to Power BI. And that array, if I want that specific array, it's called Power BI data. So I'm just going to leverage this. And here I am going to go ahead and say, okay, automatically create my columns, or I can say, okay, you know what, I'll pick my columns. So give me the name of the device. I'm going to call this device name, right? Here I can say, give me the status of the device. So here is the status, and maybe I want to pass the type of the device, not here, but here. So I'll pick the device type, and I'm going to call this type. So this creates a nice HTML table. And because I'm a guy who likes styling, I want to add a little bit of styling. So I pre-created this before the call. So I'll just copy some style tag and just plug it in here. Avoid that. It's just for styling the table. And now I will go ahead and send an email. Send an email to whom? To the person who triggered this flow, which is the person who clicked the button in Power BI. I get that right here, contextual. I'm going to pick this. My subject is going to be Power BI devices, Power BI devices data. And in the body, I'm going to add my style and the HTML. I'm going to give this flow a name, NYC. I'll click save. The flow got created. The flow will trigger from Power BI, get the data, which is an array, create a nice HTML table. I added some styling to my table, and then I'm sending that table as an email in an email to the user who clicks that button inside that Power BI report to start the flow. Once I have my flow saved, it's very important to apply it. So you see the button here, save and apply. You got to click on this. So it saves it and applies it to that visual. Once you get the success message that it has applied it, you can go back to your report and you will get this button experience right here. So I'm going to go ahead and save this report, and I'm going to refresh this. Now let's look at this report in action. Okay, back to my Power BI report. This time I have a button here that will trigger the flow. So let's say the button says, give me a report of my data, right? And if I go ahead and just click run flow, what it should do is go and trigger that flow which we created. So it says triggered. And if everything's fine, it should gather that data, create a tabular reference of that data, and send all that information over in a nicely formatted email. If the demo gods are with me, of course, it will send that nicely formatted email to me, to my mailbox. If it does not, that means something in that flow potentially has failed. The way we can debug it is by going to the flow. And this is again contextually aware. So if I select 4 records, that same 4 records will be passed from Power BI to both Power Apps and to Power Automate. They are both going to be contextually aware. So if I click run flow again, it should trigger the flow and pass that data over. And in fact, the demo gods are with me. So this is the first click I made. Check this out. It has that entire data set printed here. And this was the table I created, device name, status, and type. This was the formatting I applied. And the second time, I sent only 4 records over. Remember, contextual. I only selected 4. I hit this button. Check this out. In the email, it only gave me those 4 records. Now, this was a very simple example of sending an email, but let's say I wanted to post the information to Teams. Maybe the device is damaged. I want to notify the engineer who's working on it. I can do things like that as well. So a lot of cool scenarios can be created leveraging these integration use cases. Now, I'm going to take questions, but before I get there, just want to show you one more thing with a request. Do not share this with anyone. It's not NDA. It's just something that I built that I'm working on a video on. So this will come next week. But because you guys have been such a nice audience, I want to show you what I created and using these powers of integration. Okay. So this is a Power BI report. Okay. That is connected to a data source. Once again, I leveraged Microsoft Dataverse, and it's a desk reservation solution. In the center, I have a Power App which allows the user to reserve a desk. So I can say, yeah, I want to reserve a desk. I want to reserve a desk on the 15th. Okay, these 3 are taken. Which ones do you want, Reza? Well, I want desk 3. Let's submit this. This is that same concept. It submits the data to my data source, refreshes the visuals. You'll note the visuals on the right will change now on the fly. That's the power of direct query. And Power App having the ability to refresh Power BI. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Now, apart from all of this, I even have a visual on the left. This is actually a Visio diagram. So you can add a Visio visual inside of Power BI. Okay, Reza, that's okay, but that's just an image. No, it's not just an image. In Visio, you can add shapes. Now check this out. This is my office. Imagine this is my office space, okay? I can zoom in, I can look at my office, I can look at the desks. And let's say I want to reserve a specific desk. Okay, I've given these desks different colors. This is also based on logic. These are actual shapes in Visio. Now check this out. Let's say I want to reserve desk number 11, or let's say I want to reserve desk number 15, the pink one right here. I click this, check this out. It zooms into that shape, and not just that, that information is being contextually passed to Power Apps, and check Power Apps out. Power Apps knows I did that. And Power Apps tells me, okay, you've selected desk 15, you see? And now it says, okay, when do you want to reserve this one? Okay, let's say I want to reserve this for the 29th. I click submit and boom, desk number 15 is now reserved for me on the 29th. So now check out the powers of integration here. I have Visio, a diagram that is connected to my data set. I have the shapes connected. I have a Power App where the user can actually perform CRUD operations. I have a Power BI report that's running data live, and nothing stops me from building a flow here wherein I can send a report to myself, or I can click on a button that sends me the calendar invites for these days, and I can use Flow for that. So the potential is limitless. And if you like this one, the desk reservation solution, I'll have a step-by-step video on this next week. So check that out on my channel. Okay. Possible, please don't share it. All right, so that was it. I'm going to open the floor up now for questions. If you liked what I showcased, let me know. If you have specific questions, specific scenarios in mind, let's have a conversation now. The floor is open for questions, and these are all the details to connect with me. And thank you for listening so patiently.
Hey, Reza, there was a question from Michael about security around embedded Power Apps.
Yes. So it's a great question. So when you are adding a Power App inside a Power BI report from a security standpoint, firstly, you have to share a Power App. The way Power App works is you have to share the app with your users. So you have to ensure that you are sharing it. So if I have a Power App inside a Power BI report, if I just share the Power BI report, that does not give the user access to Power App. So even though the visual is there, they will get like an access denied, or you don't have access to open that app. That's the message you'll get in that visual. So whoever is building this report, like for example, I built it as the maker, I need to ensure that I'm sharing the Power BI report with my user. At the same time, I'm also sharing the Power App with my user. Plus, if my Power App is performing any operations on my data source, like in my case, creating records, reading records, deleting records, the users need to have those rights as well. So security is contained inside that Power App that is separate from your Power BI security. I hope I was able to answer your question, Michael. It's a great question.
Okay, thanks for that. Is there any other questions? So just Chuck or Charles Sterling, who is the product group manager from the business applications product team, has some special features that he wants to show us. So
you don't mind, Reza, do you?
No, absolutely not. Go for it. I would love to see that as well.
and by the way, that release train has not actually hit production yet. So I'm going to show you it's a tomorrow thing. That's the only reason Reza didn't show you guys.
I
He
got
actually took a look at it last night. So can I get you? Oh, there you go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I would like you to let me know when you can see it. And let's keep me honest. It's 5:02 now. Should be done by 5:07-ish. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So Reza showed you an entire world of putting Power Apps inside of Power BI. And in general, I would recommend that route for many different reasons. And we can have philosophical conversations over that over beer if I ever get to New York, or if you go to Texas, I'll go down and visit with Reza and you. There's literally the flip side of that, where you can go in and I just started a brand new Canvas app, and you can go out and start a new Power BI tile to actually move it. And what you can do here is you can actually select your workspace. And I'm looking at the Microsoft tenant, so I've got a lot of workspaces here. I should have one called Chuck's World. So I have no idea. Oh, Chaz one. Let's use that one. And you'll see that it's constrained to only look at tiles on the dashboard. And this has actually been a request that we've actually gotten many, many times. It's, hey, I want to actually show a report, or I want to show a specific piece of a report. So this is actually the current implementation. Coming this week, there's going to be a brand new property called Allow New API. It's may have already hit Europe. So Fernando, your tenant may be in South America. You may actually see it already. For the folks in New York, you probably are not seeing it. If you toggle the defaults to false, if you toggle this to true, you can do crazy things like go in and go file and go out and say embed, grab this link, go back into my application, grab this property called tile URL, and go out and replace that. Oh, we need in quotes because it's not quotes. And what we should see is we actually should see a report. So this is going to be landing anytime now. And all you have to do is toggle that. And I don't even think we're actually working on a blog post. So you're going to be accessing the secret sauce. Why or how is this even better than a report? It turns out it's a lot better, because that tile I showed you can only actually pass in one filter criteria. Remember I said there's lots of reasons why you would probably want to go ahead and use the Power Apps visual like Reza showed rather than actually what I'm doing. Well, with this new API, you can actually send in multiple filter criteria, including things like the page number. So back in the day, when I was in the Power BI team, I wrote an article on how do you actually go out and parse that string and pass things like the page number. So if we go back in here and concatenate that to the end, right now we're on duplicate of team score. I don't know what page 2 is.
I can make this dynamic actually by just passing a variable.
That's right. And right now, there's a lot of work you need to do to actually get it. Well, you can only do one filter criteria right now, and it must be a text string. With this new API, that's no longer the case. You can actually pass in multiple filter criteria, and it no longer needs to be just text string. And you can do things like the page number, which is even in a filter criteria. So we're at 5:05. I think I am dead to the money on time. Eric, Reza, thank you for letting me steal the microphone from you.
Thank you.
No problem.
You, Chuck. Chuck, I have a question. This is a Power BI. This is the whole report inside that tile?
That is you can do this right now in the current one, but what you have to do is you actually have to go out here, and get rid of this, and it's called pin to dashboard, and it's pinning the whole report. So you could do it now, but you've got to do some hoops. Okay. So ignore that. That's a Microsoft.
I'm thinking of an inception scenario. I'm in a Power App that has a tile, that has a Power BI report, that has a Power App visual inside the tile.
I've been calling that a per appin instead of per duckin.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Actually, I was reading it. I did not quite understand it, but now I did. Thank you.
Yeah. And this is landing nowish. Fernando, do you actually see that setting? Is Fernando still here? Fernando is from Mexico, folks. So, oh yeah, he's still here.
We're the last ones, right? North America is the last one.
You are. And the reason for that, in case you're here, so Fernando, if you go out and actually throw a Power BI tile, the way I did that is you go to charts, you put it in here. And what you should see in yours, and I don't have it even in this one, is allow new API. And Fernando, you may see it if your tenant is in South America or not the US. And the reason we actually wait for the last one for America to actually hit the last set of rings is a little bit like the canary in the coal mine. We want to make sure, since it's the biggest ring, that any issues have been discovered and actually ironed out by the time you guys get it.
Chuck, I do have a tenant in the Brazil region, so I'm just checking it out right now.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, Brazil actually should have gotten it, according to Milos, yesterday. So if it's not, it is literally in flight, and what you need to do is actually toggle this allow new API. And I am looking forward to it because it actually should free us up from the guidance of always use that Power Apps visual like Reza did to, hey, let the experience dictate where your data is visualized. So if it's more of a transactional app, you should probably actually keep it in Power Apps. And that's not my guidance I give today.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Chuck. Let me steal this back from you for 2 minutes. Okay, so before we drop off, just a couple of informative slides. Our Microsoft user groups or Microsoft user group is still in private preview. We have started transitioning both of the user groups there. So if you get a chance, go ahead, register to this. Sometime before the end of the year, we'll probably get out of Meetup and use only this user group. And then just a couple of announcements. So the Power Platform 2021 Wave 2 release notes were published today. So you should go ahead and read about what is coming up starting October. In addition, there is a lot of new features and things coming up that you can take a look in the Power Apps blog on the Microsoft website, such as licensing updates, multi-table lookups, advanced lookup experience. Canvas app layout containers are now in GA. And for anybody who is in financial industry or some industries that are using customer managed keys, the image and file data types are now supported for those environments. Our next event is scheduled for August 18th. We still are looking for presenter, but we have two options for the topics. One is data integration services and moving from data export service to Azure Data Synapse or Azure Data Link. The other option, which maybe it will be the session after, is using RPA or robotic process automation and Power Apps desktop flows. As I mentioned before, I have multiple links here, and you can register in any one of these three groups in order to access the event. So again, Reza, Chuck, mostly Reza, but both of you, thank you very much. This was a great session, very informative, and a lot of great features and great ideas. Well, at least for me, but I'm sure for everybody else on the call as well.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you, Chuck, for joining and showcasing what's coming up tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Reza.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.